Hello, colleagues. Good morning. Welcome to our session. We are immensely happy to receive you today. I will briefly present myself, but before that, I would like to ask you to organize yourself in 3 groups. You can try. You will need to do something whatever you suit. So we will be working in working groups, so it will be very much a very interactive session. So you see that we have 3 flip charts in the room, and we ask you to gather around these 3 flip charts, and just to guarantee that all the flip charts will have people on it. So please feel free.
Oh, great. What do you have flip charts then?
Yeah.
Reflection. The nearest. So lazy. Great. Yeah, that's practical.
You can stay here, like,
Yes. This is one.
Good morning, everybody. Quite early. You know how you feel.
Who does today? I think that's day 4.
Yeah.
Well, colleagues, I will briefly introduce myself and my colleague, my colleagues. Well, my name is Adria. I am a young professional at the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, the IFRC. And today we would like to celebrate the opportunity that we have to build this knowledge together and to enjoy the opportunity of having all of you here to jointly build knowledge. So I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Audrey.
Good morning. I'm Audrey. I work for the Federation of the Red Cross Red Crescent, and I'm co-leading the working group on protection, gender, and inclusion together with Bridget, who is joining us online, Bridget Rudram from Plan International. And we wanted to have youth at the center of the session. I think we're all young at heart, and I can see many young people actually in the room. But just to note that there are many more online, and for educational or work reasons, they couldn't be with us in the room, but they're connected. And it's going to be a hybrid session. I take the opportunity to say hi to everyone joining online. It will be very participatory. You've seen the room is set in a specific way, and we'll just keep working together. But just so you know, it's happening also online, and Bridget will let us know if there is any hiccup online and how we can help. Also to mention that not only you will work, but we also have an amazing cartoonist joining the session, and she is also plugged in and able to follow our conversation. I'll be a lot on my phone, not because I'm not paying attention to what you're saying, but because I will also make sure that I can send her pictures of your flip charts and the discussion points you come up with in the room. She is named Rebecca, and she will be able to share her work towards the end of the session. But basically her work is a reflection of your discussion. So that's why we invite you to really be active. And I'll give the floor to Catalina also, who will help us and maybe just give the overview of the scope of the session as well.
Good morning, everyone. So I shouldn't actually be talking. The person who designed the whole thing was Tessie. It should be, but Tessie needs to take it easy today. She's not feeling very well. So I'm going to step in. And so we decided to do this session with the protection working group and the conflict working group, because we believe that we need to advance in practical ways of like, how do we support children and youth with anticipatory action, but particularly those ones that live in very complex contexts, like the ones that are living in the IDP camps in extremely at-risk areas. So we want to really have this session with a focus on really bringing like all the knowledge and practical ideas that can help as a working group to be able to go to the different organizations and bring like tools and new ideas, really with that big objective, no? Like how do we make sure children and youth, particularly those ones living in conflict areas, can really benefit from anticipatory action, no? So that's like the goal of the session, like we put on that mindset. And so with that, yeah, over to you.
So it's important to highlight that I believe that we all can remember the moments where we were silenced at a young age, right? Or disencouraged at workplace when we started our careers. A lot of us still are disencouraged or not respected enough at a young age for a lot of reasons. And I think it's important for us to celebrate that we have this opportunity now to work together in a joint initiative with a lot of experts here in this room to guarantee, to enable these environments, these opportunities for young people, for the youth, for children to be heard in this very much difficult situations. So I invite all of you now to get to know each other better for 2 minutes and to just turn around to your colleague and to ask where they work, what are their expectations about the session, how they're feeling today, their names, their background. So be free to get to know each other better.
Hello. Nice to meet you. Where you were from? Oh, nice. Right, yeah. General, you know, how
I'm the co-lead of the conflict review. So yeah, really looking forward to the discussions. It'll be useful for us. So I'm Nora. I'm working on anticipatory action with based in Rome.
My name is Julia. I work in and I have been facilitating the development of exploitation frameworks with a lot of partners, including with Mora agencies. So we always work with different agencies, and I've worked at this level with Ethiopia and Chad and Somalia, and all the clusters, including the protection cluster, and well, especially UNICEF and UNHCR and UNFPA, and I'm really interested in seeing what's going on at the global level, and I'm happy to sort of contribute the lesson learned that we've had from those countries and share how we have progress and design the protection.
Right.
Hi, everyone. Having development small startup Caribbean class, coming also from the cash world. I was hired some cash yeah, so kind of protection adjacent from that perspective, because we did a lot of cash and protection work together. I'm interested in the discussion because we are designing now what the protection based on what our partners need and what's already happening.
Yeah, no,
Space, so that's very good. I'm using my daughter's favorite type because it usually attracts attention. But please, we'll just continue with some instructions for now your real work.
Yes. So thank you so much, colleagues. I hope it was a nice discussion over there. Well, unfortunately, we couldn't have children and youth to be represented here and to have the floor, at least not in person, but we really want to hear from them. So we will present you some videos, And we invite you to listen actively, not just listen, but to work with this target, this objective that is on your flip chart. So we will have 3 working groups. We have enabling environments, meaningful participation, and focused protection over there. And we invite you to hear the videos actively and start to write in your flip charts. And also online, we invite the colleagues. The colleagues online will do the same work with the working groups. And we invite you also you will be divided in breakout rooms online. And we ask you the same to start to put the sticky notes at your jump boards online. And here in the room, we ask you to do the same. So I would invite you to just be around your flip charts and actively listen to our videos.
So we have some post-its here, not next to the board. You can always start writing them.
Lũ lụt á, nó mang ảnh hưởng rất lớn đến phụ nữ và trẻ em và người dân tại cộng đồng của tỉnh Quảng Trị. Xã Thanh là một trong những tấm lũ của cả huyện nên địa hình rất phức tạp. Còn những nơi khác chỉ có đến mưa bão nặng mới có lụt. Còn xã tôi hầu như năm nào cũng bị cô lập. Đợt lũ năm 2020 là đợt lũ khó khăn nhất, đó là trận lũ của lịch sử cả nước. Giống như cuộc sống gia đình tôi thì cũng thiệt hại về gia súc gia cầm rất là lớn. Còn về cộng đồng thì thiếu lương thực, nước uống. Các trẻ em gái thì không được đến trường trong dài ngày. Nó ảnh hưởng rất lớn đến cuộc đời sinh sống của thôn Thanh Đô, của xã Thanh. Theo tôi thấy thì mỗi lần lũ lụt xảy ra thì tất cả mọi người ai đều cũng khổ. Nhưng thứ nhất phụ nữ nó sẽ cực khổ hơn vì phụ nữ phải làm những công việc mà ông chồng hay thường làm, như chẳng hạn là bưng bê, trồng chăm nhà cửa trong mùa bão lũ. Còn ngoài việc khác thì phụ nữ còn chăm con, chăm sóc gia đình, chuẩn bị lương thực trong mùa lũ. Thứ hai đó là về phụ nữ và trẻ em gái khi mà di rời đến nơi tránh lũ, tránh bão, đến nơi an toàn tại nhà cộng đồng thì không an toàn. Và đến khi phụ nữ và trẻ em gái đến khi kinh nguyệt thì sẽ thiếu thốn nơi vệ sinh và không có băng vệ sinh và sẽ mang và để lại những căn bệnh như bệnh phụ khoa. Gia đình chúng tôi thường sẽ dọn dẹp nhà cửa, kê cao đồ, mua một ít đồ ăn khô. Chủ yếu chúng tôi dọn dẹp và chuẩn bị cơ sở vật chất như lương thực là chính. Còn xã sẽ cập nhật thông tin về lũ lụt, khuyến cáo chúng tôi về điều làm và không nên làm. Chúng tôi thường xuyên theo dõi thông tin thời tiết. Xã cùng hỗ trợ chúng tôi sang sửa nhà cửa nữa. Mùa lũ năm nay, ngoài Ủy ban Nhân dân xã, chúng tôi được may mắn dự án hành động sớm dựa trên cảnh báo đã hỗ trợ. Đây là lần đầu tiên chúng tôi được hỗ trợ tiền mặt và lương thực trước khi lũ xảy ra nên tôi thấy yên tâm lắm. Nhưng năm trước, thường khi ngập lụt rồi chúng tôi mới được tiếp cận các nhà hảo tâm. Khi dự án hành động sớm dựa trên cảnh báo thực hiện tại xã, tôi đã được tham gia nhiều buổi phỏng vấn, tham vấn. Sau khi quan sát và chính thức tham gia lập quy hoạch phòng chống lũ, tôi nhận ra rằng phụ nữ nên được tham gia nhiều hơn trong các hoạt động tương tự. Thay vì đàn ông chỉ làm việc lớn, phụ nữ trong việc nhà thì đàn ông có thể giúp đỡ chúng tôi các công việc gia đình. Còn phụ nữ tham gia lập kế hoạch và kiểm tra việc thực hiện có đúng không. Tôi cũng mong rằng phụ nữ sẽ được quan tâm nhiều hơn đến vấn đề an toàn vệ sinh vì nó ảnh hưởng trực tiếp đến sức khỏe và hạn chế tình trạng bị quấy rối. Tôi cũng nằm trong ban điều hành dự án nên thường xuyên gặp các bạn trong nhóm thủ lĩnh thay đổi xã. Trong các buổi sinh hoạt, các bạn tuy còn nhỏ nhưng nhiều năng lượng và cùng chúng tôi đưa ra các sáng kiến mới. Mọi người thường nghĩ phụ nữ là hậu phương, nhưng tôi tin rằng phụ nữ hoàn toàn đóng vai trò tiên tuyến để góp sức góp ý kiến cùng nam giới. Tôi cũng là một người phụ nữ trẻ. Tôi nghĩ rằng trước khi chúng ta muốn xây dựng project hay hoạt động nào, chúng ta nên tiếp cận trực tiếp tham vấn của ý kiến của trẻ em. Bên cạnh đó, để chúng tham gia truyền thông trong mùa lũ lụt, nắm bắt thực tế đã diễn ra. Phụ nữ và trẻ em gái là một trong những đối tượng hướng lời ưu tiên của dự án hành động sớm dựa vào cảnh báo do Ballet Việt Nam đã thực hiện. Xuyên suốt dự án, phụ nữ và trẻ em gái được khuyến khích tham gia đóng góp ý kiến vào tất cả các loại giai đoạn thực hiện dự án. Họ cùng tham gia dẫn dắt và tổ chức các hoạt động chính của dự án như tham vấn cộng đồng, khảo sát nhu cầu cấp phát tiền mặt. Tính đến nay, dự án hành động sớm dựa vào cảnh báo hỗ trợ thành công 6.472 người hưởng lợi, trong đó có 4.120 phụ nữ và trẻ em gái.
So thank you for your attention to the video. We need to try to understand and to hear actively what this young woman was trying to say to us. And just a recap of the instructions. So particularly to the colleagues online, we ask you to go to menti.com and to use the password that is written in your screen. And to participate with us to our word cloud. So the first word cloud is on meaningful participation, and we ask you to put your insights in there and add keywords to the word cloud as you listen to the perspectives in the video. So this will be your way to participate here with us in the room. And for our colleagues in the room, you are all divided in 3 groups. And each group will move to one of the 3 boards and read what the focus is giving you to the board, and think about the focus as you listen to the perspective in the videos, and take a marker and add your notes. So be free to just move around if you want, and to put your sticky notes also to other boards if you would like to. But yeah, we invite you to do that now.
Feel free to have a chat in between, what you think about it, move around.
Ni volontaire ma ni
Stick them on and then see. No, I wait. So this one is specifically, you still have to introduce yourself. You didn't get around to, and then everybody gets to go.
Maybe for our online participants, did you get all the Mentimeter?
Yes, I did. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So we could share the screen of the Menti so far. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
Oh.
But it says that you're sharing. Yeah, now.
Brilliant. Okay. So thanks everybody for inputting as you listened to Phuc in Vietnam share her perspectives on anticipatory action and the experience there. And we've got lots of different inputs into the word cloud. Thank you. So we can see young women coming across most strongly. Access information, oh, it's changing. We've got more inputs. Access information also really key. Access for participation, thinking about different people's needs, having a gender focus again is coming through strongly, and we've got a few more around gender as well. Girls, women being responsible. We've got some points here around sort of specific needs of women and girls. So somebody's put in menstruation management. We've also got intersectionality here, thinking about different needs, gender focus, gender consideration, different people's needs. So it's great that we've really picked up on the differentiated impacts and particularly the gendered impacts through what we heard from Phuc. And then we've got more around children involved, children as champions, shifting the power, making sure things are understandable. We've got forecast-based action highlighted, which is what it was all about. Technology sharing, what other things? And then we've got a few comments here around communication, which is good as well. And as I said before, access to information, consulting, no barriers, somebody's put. Great that we're still seeing a few more coming in. So I think that's a strong word cloud, and we'll come back to this later in the session to think about how we really then move some of these key points forward across anticipatory action. So I think we're going to hear some audience reflections in a moment. I don't know if we can go back and hear the sound from the main room, or if we're still waiting to get connected again.
So now we will watch the next video and keep the discussions. Yes, yes.
Ny volontaire FJKM ato anatin'ny fitandremana anankiroa moa izay ny miara-miombona, fitandremana am-pao sy ny fitandremana tsara sambo synodam-paritany Kristy fanantenantsika Tomasina Atsimo no nanao ny atrik'asa ho fiomanana ny fiatrehan'ny Rivodoza Fredy niarahana tamin'ny SAF FJKM. Ny asa natao moa zany dia fanamafisana ny fiofanana mahakasika ny fiomanana izay tokony atao manoloana izany fiavian'ny Rivodoza zany. Ary rehefa vita izay fanamafisana ny fiofanana izay dia nanatanteraka ny atrik'asa. Ny atrik'asa natao moa zany dia fanentanana ny vahoaka teto amin'ny commune Tsarasambo ho fiomanana amin'ny fiatrehana zany Rivodoza zany. Ny zavatra natao dia fanentanana ny olona tsirairay ny isa-tokantrano ny isa-tanàna izay marihana fa misy tanàna maromaro manodidina. Ity sakanila ity nanaovana an'izany fanentanana izany. Isaorana an'Andriamanitra fa vokatry ny fanentanana izay natao dia
na dia tsy dia mafy loatra aza ny fiantraikan'ny Fredy teto amin'ny commune izay misy anay a, dia afaka niomana soamantsara ny olona ary azo lazaina hoe tena vonina tanteraka tamin'ny fiatrehana ny rivo-doza. Ny volontaire atao anatin'ny fitandremana dia eo amin'ny 80 isan-jato ny angamba, dia saika tanora avokoa, sampana tanora ao anatin'izany fitandremana anankiroa izany, ary tena mandray anjara mavitrika tokoa izy ireo amin'ny asa fanentanana izay natao nandritra n'iny atrik'asa iny, dia mankasitraka ny SAF-FJKM.
So colleagues, thank you for your attention. Now we'll give you 1 to 2 minutes. It's very quick, I'm sorry. To add your sticky notes and your sticky notes online to our Jamboard. And at the same time, I would like to give the floor to someone that would like to react while we are putting our contributions.
Adria, are we staying at the same board or are we moving around now?
If you would like to move to other Jamboards, feel free, colleagues.
Yeah. Okay.
You think about the videos, like on Friday, there was like so impactful a couple of like a month ago. Yeah.
The thing is that as a professional, you also have the data.
Well, we'll
So I think we have a colleague in the audience ready to share some responses. So if we go over to Dana from Nepal Red Cross, if you'd like to introduce yourselves and share a few reflections on the videos we've just heard. Thank you.
Shall I start? Namaste. Good afternoon from Nepal. Thank you for this valuable time to share Nepal's experience of child engagement in early action. First of all, I appreciate for the video and showcasing young people. It was very interesting to hear that 80% of volunteers ahead of Cyclone Freddy are youth. Like this, in Nepal, we also try to engage children and youth in our forecast-based early action for flood. Actually, we mapped existing child club, adolescents group, and these groups are considered in capacity building, community orientation, and other intervention of early action. And 2 years ago, we also conducted a PGI gap analysis assessment and post-simulation interaction with the consultation of most vulnerable group, including adolescent girls. In this interaction, the adolescent girls share their bitter experience of evacuation center of previous flood. And they share that they faced abuse, teasing, bullying related problem by their nearer and relatives and neighbors in the evacuation center. The main reason behind this problem were common toilet for male and female, and there was open spaces for bathing, and there was no spaces for breastfeeding and changing room for girls and other persons. As a result, they felt very hesitation and uncomfort to stay in the evacuation shelter. And through this experience, they suggested us to improvement of inclusive evacuation shelter as an early action. As their suggestion, we conducted a participatory approach for safe shelter training at the municipal level to ensure safe, inclusive, accessible shelter in future. And our simulation also was done to show real scenario of early action and inclusive shelter, with the example of accessible separate toilet for male and female, and separation of wash area and specific spaces with inside the room, specific spaces, how specific spaces for breastfeeding and changing clothes. We show the example to the community. And also we showed the reporting, and as a reporting and responding mechanism, a help desk was established in the shelter, a temporary shelter, basically to report the abuse, exploitation, sexual and gender-based violence and child protection case, and respond quickly and timely manner by using relevant referral pathway. And in the shelter, in the help desk, we also disseminate toll-free number and other relevant contact number for to report their concern, including child protection related case. And beside this child club also play a key role. They were key players to disseminate early warning messages in the community like Madagascar. It was very proven and effective, helps strengthen their agency as well. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dana, for those reflections.
Yes, I am also welcome your valuable suggestion and query. I will be happy if I hear from you as well.
Thank you so much, Dana. Well, colleagues, now we will watch the next video. We only have 4 in total, so just saying. And we welcome your continued work. For the participants online, we will now focus on meaningful participation. So you can add the key points to the first word cloud, and after 2 minutes, move to the next Menti page and word cloud, and get ready to add the keywords and protection focus as you hear the perspectives. So now we will hear a bit more about gender violence and the dangers that young women and girls can face in this disasters and conflict situations. So
APIL intervient dans le domaine de l'agroécologie, et qui parle d'agroécologie parle un ensemble d'actions, de paquets technologiques qui tentent en tout cas à trouver une solution alternative aux effets néfastes des changements climatiques. Pour ce faire, nous travaillons avec les partenaires communautaires avec lesquels nous travaillons au niveau village, qui sont les producteurs, à entreprendre des actions en tout cas qui permettre de trouver une solution durable à cela. Je vais prendre l'exemple par exemple des actions de cordon pierreux, voilà, qui sont des techniques à travers des cailloux. On fait un alignement en suivant le niveau d'écoulement de l'eau et ça permet effectivement de récupérer des terres à des fins agricoles. Il y a également par exemple la technologie des demi-lunes agricoles, voilà, qu'on implémente dans des terrains arides, impropres à l'agriculture. Et quand on arrive à faire des demi-lunes, voilà, on arrive effectivement à produire et on peut avoir en tout cas une très bonne production. Il y a également des techniques comme les ailes agricoles, le compostage, voilà, naturel, qui à travers la désection animale, le feuille mort des arbres, on applique et au bout de 60 jours, en tout cas, on a du compost très mûr qu'on utilise pour fertiliser les sols. Et là, en tout cas, ça permet effectivement d'avoir un regain environnemental et social. Donc ce que nous faisons, nous travaillons effectivement à aménager des périmètres maraîchers en y apportant des tuyauteries, des motopompes, on fait la parcellisation et là on permet effectivement à des ménages vulnérables de pouvoir venir travailler. Et chacun a au moins 400 mètres carrés avec son ménage, il vient travailler. Ils produisent de l'oignon, du chou, de la tomate, des aubergines et de l'oseille. Et en fin de campagne, ces ménages-là arrivent en tout cas à réaliser des chiffres d'affaires assez impressionnants. Et cela se ressent dans la vie du ménage puisque le papa ou la maman peut en tout cas assumer ces conditions en envoyant effectivement les enfants à l'école, en les soignant Et au-delà de tout ça, la consommation même diversifiée, par exemple des tomates, des oignons et autres, là, améliore en tout cas la nutrition au niveau même du ménage.
Haya ni yagara. Ahan wa woto no yagara na fatondo. Hanan ko lo ton we wara kuimi we wana le baziri. Kamba pale na mhedi maram panam hedi. Sebra woto no tonda patin pam bugumu wiriti ya yagari. La woto aton han yikiya nana ringa yawa akko lo tondo. Kama han yikar ngwa riwing riana wosin kaw mo ganinga tata timbia pokwa winga me tibigari la le yikin lebra karo le biga han yiki mpam jibandi la wa e kwallan wa pame sura han ma bala anda tumninga tumna la kom han tara baya yiki ma kom han tara patin tum la handi bata pokwa piri tumda ya soma aya be nan dima wayile nan di apokwa nan pide me nam sokkabi fanan le gala ta tubugum fanan le gala ta yinwi hinwa fo hinwi hinwa sabala hanan se ko handata fanan le gala la me yetiba ya nye wajini maha tomna handati la karne la yi kundo ti family yi kisiengo siakalo tondata songri tondata ko jenda hambia kawa nyamwa wa yampagata ko ma men kasie kre song pomma han pombre kupude me han wa yibe woto ngini ga bitamti yampalo la ko ma handa ya ko mbal hangai ti yam tabalan pak woto nyamwa wa yam na mi kam taketi ya mahari apana angelere.
Au niveau des villages, les communautés ne sont pas entièrement responsabilisées. Et pour moi, ça, c'est vraiment un grand handicap. Et si on veut y remédier, il faut travailler effectivement à responsabiliser davantage ces acteurs parce que c'est eux qui sont vraiment en première ligne dans ce processus. Parce que, c'est comme je l'ai dit, sans la communauté, sans l'apport de la communauté de l'engagement communautaire, toute action envers la communauté serait vaine. Apil intervient.
Plan Internacional en El Salvador implementa proyectos de acción humanitaria y de desarrollo, incluido acciones anticipatorias para aumentar la resiliencia de las niñas y las adolescentes y mitigar los impactos que enfrentan debido a los peligros naturales y sociales. En nuestro más reciente estudio publicado en abril de 2023, denominado Mujeres Adolescentes en Crisis, encontramos que el 22% de mujeres adolescentes que fueron encuestadas consideran que la violencia social y la violencia por razón de género son factores para el abandono escolar. Además, 1 de cada 5 mujeres adolescentes encuestadas piensa que la violencia sexual o por razón de género es motivo para migrar. La experiencia de Paola nos dará un ejemplo de cómo las acciones anticipatorias pueden convertirse en un camino para aumentar la resiliencia.
Hola, soy Paola, vivo en una comunidad de El Salvador y estudio 9º grado. El lugar donde vivo tiene bastantes problemas o riesgos, como las lluvias causan inundaciones o deslaves en distintos lugares que causa que las personas tengan que moverse a otras viviendas, y también hay riesgos de migraciones, que personas se desplazan por diferentes causas. En mi caso yo participé en diferentes tipos de talleres. Hacemos nuestro plan de emergencia, preparamos un kit de emergencia por cualquier situación que pueda ocurrir para estar preparados para cualquier cosa. En mi caso, los talleres que recibí me ayudaron a otorgarme diferentes conocimientos que antes no tenía, y eso me ayuda hoy para, si hay alguna persona que necesita migrar y valen mis consejos, puedo darle a conocer los peligros que puede recibir a migrar del país. Todas estas acciones, si las implementamos de manera anticipatoria, puede disminuir los impactos en la comunidad y más que todo en las niñas y adolescentes. Es necesario que las instituciones se coordinen para generar campañas o oportunidades para que las niñas y las adolescentes se integren en actividades y puedan tener un rol activo. Me gustaría que en el futuro las acciones anticipatorias fueran más amplias para las mujeres y las adolescentes y las personas con discapacidad.
Well, colleagues, thank you for your attention and to bear with us to watch all the 4 videos. Well, now we will move to working group discussions. As you've been adding your points to the boards and also online to the clouds and to the Jamboards. Now we would like to ask you to continue discussing within your groups. And if you would like to join other groups as well, please feel free to add your insights on the topics that we put.
So, hi everyone online. We'll be moving you into 3 different breakout groups, and we'll continue discussing these 3 topics in the breakout groups. And each group will have a facilitator to help support the discussion. So we'll build on the word clouds, which we'll discuss in those groups. And the idea now is to really think about concrete next steps to move forward some of the pieces we've heard in the video. So thinking about what capacities we have and what resources we have as next steps that we can be taking already. So if Hela could, unless there's any questions or clarifications, you will have somebody in the breakout room with you to help talk through what we're doing. And we'll copy the Jamboard into the chat now.
I will move you then now to the breakout rooms.
Brilliant, yeah. And the Jamboard is in the chat for everybody to go to as well. Thanks, Hila.
Bridget, I think you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so I think we've got a few more minutes to share back in plenary what we've heard in each of the groups. And I'm sorry that those discussions were quite short. We were cut off in group 1, but maybe to share back with you group 1, and then we can move to group 2's facilitator. So we were discussing meaningful participation of children and youth, and especially girls and young women, and trying to make,
you have more familiar groups.
Can we move to the main room? Yeah, and trying to make this a standard approach. So we had a few good reflections already from a humanitarian perspective. We heard that in terms of identifying children and youth and accessing in terms of timings. So often the design activities are happening during school timings, and how we address this. And somebody else put a reflection there that actually we could work with education school sector to embed these activities and school activities and policies. So we have talked about more with the Protection Gender Inclusion Working Group, working more with education and using this as a protective action, but also in terms of that design piece and getting it integrated into schools. Somebody else mentioned making sure that we include children with disabilities, and making sure that they're responding to that anticipatory action is responding to the additional barriers they face. So concrete ideas in terms of how we make sure that that's included in our approaches can continue adding to the Jamboard. And a few other quick feedback around moving beyond extractive activities, collecting good examples, so further developing our evidence base, which is key and something we're trying to do in the Anticipation Hub. And then somebody's flagged a really key one here around lack of budget and resources. And that's something we're really hoping to get onto and move on from this session. If we've got a group of interested organisations, how we really address this resourcing piece to move forward these key points that we're making. Okay, so, and there's a few other good points on here as well that will all be included in the report of the session. As we're short for time, let's move on to the second word cloud, which Hayley was facilitating, and over to Hayley to share a few key points.
Thank you. So our sticky notes were very much focused on kind of looking at those concrete actions of what the next steps are, looking at how to advance protection-focused anticipatory action. So there seemed to be 3 kind of key groups of information that came across. So one of them was really looking at actually understanding what the cross-section between anticipatory action and protection is, kind of looking around how there maybe isn't enough understanding around that topic just yet, and really looking at what protection prevention work looks like when looking at forecast-based financing, forecast-based action and things like that. And then the second thing, which you'll be able to see very clearly on the screen, was very much looking at risk analyses, policies, increasing access to things like technology, and really increasing guidelines, all of those kinds of things. So we have, I think you can tell we have a lot of people that work in this space online that are very much focused around getting those policies in place, which is really good. So there's a bit of a consensus there. And then our last one, and what I thought was really important, was having increased children and youth-centered anticipatory dialogue. So really centering the voices of youth and children. So not actually just making policies for them, but including them in the discussions in a meaningful way is really important as well. And then also having channels for kind of accountability and reflection as well was a really important one that came up from the group. But yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, thanks Hayley. Are there, maybe we want to go to the in-person audience and see if there's any reflections to add to either the participation or the protection feedback that we've shared so far.
So colleagues, if you would like to take the floor. Yes.
To our discussions that we had, okay, yeah, yeah, I mean, I can try, and happy that if our group adds on or complements. I think there were two main discussion points while I was in the group. The one is that we, anyways, have, I mean, need to have a locally led anticipatory action and need to involve communities, and that's the first step that in some cases we are already getting a little better in. But that's not the last step. The last step is then also in the community really to make different, the voice of different groups, give it presence and give it voice, because they will have very different ideas. And yes, there is a lot of ideas in the communities that already face these risks day on day out, and this is what we have to harvest. And I mean, we discussed a bit the situations in which that was already practiced, and where you had like children groups that have really good ideas, and it's not necessarily the common practice to listen to them, but we need to do that better, and this meaningful participation will help us to get also better protection outcomes in the end. And the second thing was a bit that this could also be like common practice in any development or humanitarian work, but we want to have an added value as anticipatory action. And I would say, or we discussed that, that's around having better forecasts, ideally, so we can include the knowledge that's there already, combine it with knowledge that we have externally with forecasting institutions and so on. So we increase the lead time, we have more time. So when we say, okay, what could we do ahead of the next disaster if we only had 1 day more, 2 days more? Yeah? And that's one thing, longer lead time. And the second thing is that we need funding. And that's the whole thing about forecast-based financing or anticipatory action. We need to lead to connect it to funding. So we can ask then the voices of the different groups, what would you do if you had a little more time to act, and if you had the funding to do something? And then I think we come out with meaningful protection outcomes of anticipatory action.
And to complement that, I think at the beginning, I think one of the first videos, we also had discussion that, I mean, at the center of being able to anticipate a crisis, we need to understand what are the likely impacts, like what are the risks, what is going to happen, because that's the foundation to know what are the actions that you can actually do. So by knowing how children or youth are actually impacted and what matters to them, then you are really able to say, I'm gonna do X, Y, Z. So I think that's one of the key issues, no? Like if you really know what makes sense, like what is the risk that you want to tackle, then you are able to really meaningfully design that action that will help children and youth.
Yes, the protection focus group. Yeah.
I think it's related to what was just said, but ultimately protection risks are every program and every sector's responsibility, right? And there's so much we could do through the WASH, intervention, health, nutrition also, because these three sectors often get most of the attention and the funding when there's a crisis. So what could we do with these sectors to ensure that it's really automatic for them to embed, I would say, protection in their response, but that we can also learn from their interventions to have the trend triggers and inform our engagement with the communities and the local authorities. So it's really about, it's more than mainstreaming, it's really prevention of protection risks through other sectors. Yeah.
Maybe someone else from the protection focus group would like to speak? No? Or maybe someone else? Yes.
Maybe I can come in just to look at the board. So I think what we can add here is this holistic approach about, okay, when we talk about protection, we need to look at several levels. So we will look at children, we will look at the family, we will look at the community, the society, and it's this whole system that will allow us to look at adaptive interventions in terms of anticipatory action, and to think ahead of, just not looking at, okay, we need to provide cash, maybe anticipatory cash for children to go to school, but to think about, we've seen it in this video, to think about, okay, if we allow them to have their own, let's say, a livelihood, production and all these things, they can then afford to leave children going to school, enroll them to school. So it's the whole system that needs to be integrated when we talk about anticipatory action. So I think that's
many thanks, colleagues. And now maybe we can finish here in the room with our last group and then move to the online, to the last one. So maybe colleagues from enabling environments, if you'd like to share.
Should I summarize quickly? Okay. I'm very jealous of the very organized boards that I see there. Ours is not, but I'll cluster it a little bit for people. We were talking about what we need as professionals to actually achieve some of these really good objectives that were just mentioned in the other two discussions. And so that's a bit more on the meta level. And I think what came out, there was a lot that came out, but just to emphasize a couple of things, I think better coordination and understanding who is actually doing what was brought up by a couple of people. And we saw a lot of sticky notes around that centered. And that's not just, that's especially understanding who is responsible for what and how can we bring in all these different information sources. When we were talking about tools, a strong point that came up was integration into existing ones and not developing additional extra tools already. So tools that are relevant and already used in the field and integrating, screening that for protection integration would be very important. And having best practices or examples and guidance on the sort of core elements that were mentioned before. So protection specific early actions, for example, having examples from that. Having examples of participation and coordination approaches that are useful and have been successful by other organizations. And linking to that, there's a lot of guidance out there on this topic already, and I don't think we need to necessarily add to it, but navigating that as a practitioner is quite difficult sometimes, right? There's a lot out there. How do you find what works for you? And then also have that, I think we were talking also about the idea of impact-based forecasting and impact-based action and understanding that in a disaggregated way, which is useful for perhaps people that are not necessarily in the local context, but then also really understanding that you need to bring in the local context in advance, because that's typically where the people are who know best what is the risk and what you need to do. So that localization agenda came in really strongly for us as well. I think those were a couple of the key points. So I think best practices, integration into existing tools, and really strong emphasis on coordination and localization were the key takeaways. Thanks. If anyone has anything to add in terms of engagement.
Colleagues from the group, if you'd like to add something. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, something else that came up clearly was creating a safe space. So kind of like having opportunities for complaints and feedback mechanism, easy access to funding opportunities, and also linking with the community from the beginning of the projects so that they do not just come into play when the project has already advanced. Those are some of the things that also came up clearly from the online group. Connecting with the children, connecting with the people from the various groups, vulnerable groups, such as the persons living with disability, the women and the men group, so that you can be able to understand their needs and they can also contribute in a way that is meaningful to the project implementation. So I think as a summary, that is, those are some of the key points that came out from the online group. Thank you.
Yeah, I have just one more point.
Yes, please.
It's for any kind of anticipatory action, maybe not solely linked to protection, but from a donor perspective, it's very important to get rid of your money at the end of the year. So since anticipatory action has a speculative character, what is important is that the fund or the recipient of the funding going to anticipatory action has enough coverage to respond to various situations around the world to make sure that money will actually be spent, that the trigger will be activated, and that there will be no leftovers, so to say. So that such anticipatory action plans or pots of money are interconnected around the globe, so that there's some kind of fungibility or capacity of transfer that money from one context to the other, depending on if the trigger is activated or not.
Perfect. And well, I would have one more request for the colleagues online and here in the room. If you could choose one action, one concrete outcome for each one of these thematics, but a very concrete one, because this collective knowledge that we are collecting now online and here in the room, we will definitely build a report on it, but we will try to move it to reality and to have a concrete outcome from this, from your knowledge and from your participation here. So maybe if the colleagues online or the colleagues here in the room, if you could think about one concrete outcome from each of these thematics.
For me, I mean, an idea that I think that group mentioned something that I think is so important. I mean, there are institutions that are so good already at protection and youth-led. There are actually like so many amazing things that I think we just need is to make sure to enable the environment for this kind of cross-sharing, for that like exchange of communication. And I think the Anticipation Hub is one of those really great spaces to kind of like bring these communities together, like promoting kind of like that. So I think it is kind of obvious, but it doesn't really happen, at least so far. So I think it just needs to happen. And I guess your working group on protection is really the key for these kind of things.
Perfect. And yes?
I think we need to take as a link of everyone. We know the donors, they want to fund, yes, but they don't want to see the outcome, the profits, what they help. So we need to have a guidelines, we need to have a classification, what type of help they need. So there was 3 types of humanitarian things here. The first one was a flood. So the flood, how can we have a guideline for the flood? How can the donors help basically on a guidance, how to help them? And basically, how can we train the ownership by the communities? Because the communities is the one that need to know what do they do in every time there's going to happen this. If something that happens every year, I know the donors is going to be there, yes, but they still have to know all all things linked, because it's sharing a knowledge, and sharing a knowledge will make this community power and enforce what they need. And maybe they won't need support in some years because they can pass through it, because they already know what to do and what they need. And like not asking for the donors to give more than they because if like founding, we should know what should be founding, suppliers, wash, what it is. So it's a link in everything here. It's giving leadership to the community to know what's happening, going to be there, give some understandable to the donors, what they are going to do there, what type of help they should prevent there, and those things.
Perfect. And thinking about that, this overview, we all here as professionals, as humanitarians, if we could, given everything that we heard today, everything that we discussed, if we can now from this room, leave this room today with a concrete next step in our minds regarding our work and our organizations, what would you do? And now I also invite the colleagues online. Yes?
I think for me, it's really something practical, because there's so much we still need to do. No? And there's so many gaps. We know we have to do so much better. And sometimes there's also linking it to a bit of pragmatism, what really can work at a country level. But the way I kind of in my mind try to structure is really to thinking about the different steps when you develop your anticipatory action system. So really from the hazard identification, are we really choosing the hazards, like the perspective from the most vulnerable? Do we have the right data? Going to the early warning system, does everybody reach the messages? It's really like we also heard in one of the videos, like what a good communicator also the youth are, like how they can multiply these messages. I think often that is not, we just think in a one-way communication way in some cases. Then third, think about the implementation. Okay, like, are we really reaching those that are most vulnerable, especially in really protracted crisis contexts, like in Afghanistan? How can you ensure that? And it's really challenging, but trying your best. Then even to the end, like going for like to the data analysis, when you do an impact evaluation, do you really hear the right voices? Like, do you really get the feedback? And I think I love these videos so much. They were like, really like, that's what we all want to see. And I even would like to see more critical videos, that these communities tell us you don't do that right yet, like really a call for action also from their side. I think that would be really welcome, and to have this kind of, maybe for me also like something concrete each of us can do when we have an anticipatory action protocol. Do we have an obligatory part of inclusiveness kind of concerns, and they're not just, okay, we will target 50% women, but something a bit more meaningful in there. I feel that's something we can all do. And last, on the partnership kind of area, I really like that point as well, like we can never do that alone, And so it's like, for me, it's of course all this bottom-up work and with the communities and with different partners, but also thinking, for example, often I work for food and agriculture organization, often I sit on the table with the Met Office, the Agriculture Ministry, the social welfare ministry, not so much unless it's a linkage to social protection or something, So I feel there's also a lot we have to work on both sides of the coin.
Yes, please, and then here.
Yeah, I think very similar. For the one on the one end, I think we have to revisit the manuals for developing early action protocols and see do they include not only, I say, community engagement, but also engagement of the different groups that need to be engaged. And I think that's something that we can do relatively easily, because the idea to develop together with communities and workshops and so on, that's there anyway. So we just have to look that includes the right voices as well on that level. I think that's what we need to do and revise our manuals and our practice. And the second thing that is a bit more on the meta level, I mean, it was very nice that in the beginning of the workshop you said we are all also looking young, all of us, but do we actually engage the people also on that level? So I mean, the Sender framework, for example, they have their stakeholder engagement mechanism where different groups have a say in the discussion on the whole thing of DRR. Do we have such a thing in anticipatory action? We have, like, what was it, 70 active frameworks. Out of all these frameworks, sure, there's a lot of people engaged somewhere somehow. Can we make their voices heard in getting our next steps and our next tasks that we need to take on as organizations? That would be interesting for me.
Perfect. And just to ensure that I think we all have been silenced somehow, especially when we were and we are young, right? And we still are being silenced. We are being silenced, and we all can put these shoes and to remember when we were disencouraged in our work, when our voices were silenced, and in things that matter to our work or to our lives, and we haven't been given the opportunity to actually act on that. And well, please, colleague.
No, just to add a little bit to the discussion. Actually, I was mentioning that when I first saw this session, it said intergenerational. So that's why I came here, because I wanted to represent the elderly. But the same thing, I always attend, women empowerment discussions because I want to represent men.
Yeah.
When you are in a country like Afghanistan where you don't have access to women, it doesn't make sense to just talk to the women. It makes more sense to engage with the men to sort of like have that positive change in it.
Yes.
In a society where children are not taken seriously, their best partners are the elderly. Because the ones who are already at that age, they develop some sort of like respect from the community, any community you go in Asia. They would always tell you, ask this one because he's lived like 1,000,000 years already and he knows what he's doing. If you, and most of the most interesting discussions that I've had in communities involve a moderated discussion between the youth, the children, and the elderly, because they come up with the most outrageous outcomes and outputs. But it's a good practice to sort of do that. I think to me, like as far as the whole anticipatory action thing is, one part is we always say we need more, our donors are always saying we need more evidence that it works. There's a lot of evidence, just looking at that video. I think they say we need to get better data. I think for me, the focus should now be accountability on non-action. I think we need to move from trying to please donors with sort of like coming up with those good stories, because we keep on giving them, but it's not working. I think we really need to focus on where does accountability lie when, because of our failure to do anticipatory action, the impact is much worse. Who do we hold accountable? One part is the government. At the end of the day, the government is ultimately responsible for its people. But at the same time, us as actors who are part of that system are accountable. And any donor who does not fund anticipatory action for reasons should be held accountable. But how do we do that? Is it the Anticipation Hub? Is it IESC? Like, where does power lie? Because it's an echo chamber in a way. The ones who came here are the ones who believe in anticipatory action, which is why it's a bit interesting, like looking at the room, like who's not here. Just a point to think about.
Yes, many thanks for your contributions to all of you. And now we would like to invite our cartoonists that is joining us online that have worked on some of the notes that you put on your Jamboards online and here in the room. So let's look at what we have.
Hi, everyone. Hello from Washington, D.C. This is not complete. I'm working on my iPad, but I'm looking forward to integrating some more pieces. This is a bit of a hybrid of visual notes and cartooning. But I feel like because so many of the sentiments that were shared are things we've heard before, I wanted to focus this time more on cartoons that pull out some of these nuances and frustrations within the group. So if you look throughout, I'm not sure how good the resolution is over there, but if you look throughout, you'll see these like little micro cartoons that just like get at some of these tensions that are coming up, which I feel like are the most interesting. And namely, I'm thinking about these questions and points about, like, we continue to have these conversations about youth without having, the prioritizing the presence of the youth in the room, or prioritizing the presence of the youth at the start of the project. And I know these are shared frustrations amongst all of us, so I really wanted to bring those in. But hearing the last points that just came up now, I've been taking notes about how to include youth when potentially it's really difficult to have them have access to youth perspectives or have access to women perspectives. I'll be sure to integrate those pieces into the last little corners here. And I still have yet to go through all of the notes from the in-person conversations, and I'll be doing that after the fact. And I believe this will be shared out with you so you can refer back to it and share it on social media, etc. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll pass it back over to the room.
Many thanks, Rebecca. Many thanks for this amazing work. Well, colleagues, this is what you built today. So we can all be very proud of our work and our discussions. And we can finish and wrap up this session with this feeling that we built concrete knowledge here, and that we will be more able to live the session online and to live the room here in the building with next steps in our minds, with new ideas of how to integrate youth and voices into anticipatory action. So many thanks for your participation. Many thanks for your time. We value your time immensely for being today with us. And well, thank you so much. If someone would like to finish, to give the last words.
Maybe a few last words to
get back a bit the different discussion points and answer some of them by reinforcing that we have 2 working groups hosted by the Anticipation Hub. Membership is completely open and it's basically like-minded people for now coming together to develop projects. And I think this is where it's important that we don't stay within each organization independently developing the tools when we know that they would serve the entire community. And just to get back on the need for guidance, the need for case studies, the need for evidence, this is where we aim to come together and produce those. So if you have a specific interest, get to kind of go and speak to Catalina for what is conflict. I'm available for more climate-related discussions, but with the objective of having protection. And just looping back maybe to the idea on partnership and investment, and so many different actions we can do with the children from the beginning if we include them, and we include them through their own bodies and agencies and school clubs, everything we heard from the video, but also through other members of the community who can help continue having them at the table. We can have them in the preparation phase. And I think there is a lot to be improved in terms of making terminology and anticipatory action understandable for them. That means integrating educative programs, mainstreaming that throughout the existing tools, but also ensuring they're at the table. And this requires a lot of entry points. And we all have a role to play in updating our manuals, and also ensuring that they're not considered only throughout the methodology, but also they can contribute to the action. And I think here we had amazing examples in the videos of their own contribution, and they're very eager to help, but we need to help them help. And just to close as well, saying that all these discussions we have with the young people, with the communities about protection issues is already a return on investment for the donors. I think there is a lot of prevention ongoing by having those discussions. We heard earlier about, for instance, the modifications made to the shelters, like just bringing up this question of violence risks ahead is actually changing the types of actions that are incorporated in the early action protocols and having then a concrete impact. And that means hopefully a little less violations ongoing and better response. So I think all our work is actually feeding to better prevention. And with that, I just encourage you to join and contribute. Thank you so much.
Yeah.